I originally came up with the idea for frii.site in 2023. It was meant to be an easier free subdomain service compared to stuff like free DNS. Since when I was young, I tried to get a free domain for a Minecraft server I was hosting, but the original website for free DNS was too complicated for me, so I couldn't figure it out. Around the same time in 2023, I had also made my first website, but then someone saw it and asked if I could make a website for him. And I didn't have any projects at the time, so of course I agreed. He gave me the design files for it in Figma, and my job was to make a website out of them. So I did, and he was quite happy with it, even though it was quite buggy. But then he also asked me if I could make the server for it. My only experience with server-side development at this point was making a little comment section for my own website, so I didn't know much. But of course I didn't tell this to him, and I agreed to make it. But ultimately the project was abandoned right after I finished the server for it. So a few months after this, I came back to the idea of the free subdomain service and started looking for domains. I was just typing stuff into the text box and I found out that frii.site was available. So of course I decided to register it and commit to the idea. Instead of making a completely new server, I just decided to reuse the one I made for the previous project. So obviously I had to make a new website because I couldn't just steal that. I didn't expect frii.site to be a massive project, so I whipped something up quickly with Bootstrap and called it a day. You can see some images of the old website behind me. It had a lot of issues. I was using plain HTML, so reactivity was an issue. I also wasn't using any JavaScript libraries, so I was doing DOM manipulation by hand. And yeah, it was just a horrible setup. So after deciding that I want to move out of HTML and JavaScript, I decided to migrate to Svelte. The reason I went with Svelte was because the markup resembles HTML a lot, and I liked how you don't have to define functions in order to render out elements on screen. This was my second time using Svelte ever, so I didn't really know how I should do things, so I just experimented, and I'd say it ended pretty well. The website wasn't that ugly, it was a lot easier to add new features and a lot less buggier, so I'd say the redesign was successful. Before the redesign I probably had around 10 users in total, but after redesigning the website I decided to promote it a little on my TikTok page. Even though the comments were mostly negative, I still gained around 100 users in a day or so. By this time my summer break had started, so I started adding features more frequently. Some of these features were, for example, a built-in vulnerability reporter and a built-in translation page. I didn't work on frii.site that much because I was busy getting my moped license and hanging out with friends. A few weeks after school had started, I got a report saying that frii.site subdomains were no longer working. After contacting my registrar's support, I discovered that the entire domain had been taken down due to a phishing attack. So I go in to submit a review, and it takes radix 4 days to even respond, and then an additional day in order to actually unblock the domain. A few weeks after the incident, frii.site had hit 500 users in total. And to celebrate that, I decided to redesign the homepage of the website. So now it's already Halloween, and I wanted to do something fun, so I redesigned the website in dark and orange colors. After Halloween was over, I received some feedback that a dark version of the website would be great, so I switched the website over to dark mode permanently. By now I was getting closer to reaching the Cloudflare's free 1000 DNS records limit for free accounts, so I decided to close the registration down and make frii.site invite only until I could figure something out. Okay, so it's 2025 now and I want to start working on frii.site again. I decided that hosting my own DNS would be the best option because there weren't any free DNS services that offered unlimited records, which I needed. After doing a bit of research, I discovered that Massive Grid was probably my best option since it was affordable and had a static IP and had lots of bandwidth. So I bought the server and started configuring it a few days later. I tried to set up Power DNS for quite a while, but the first installation broke somehow, the second had some permission problems, and by the end of this whole ordeal I decided to just take a break for a while. While I didn't have motivation to work on the DNS, I decided to rewrite the entirety of the backend in order to make sure everything was fine before switching over to the new DNS. So May 1st, 2025, I finally switched over to the new DNS. I also got nominated for a scholarship for frii.site in my school. A few months later in July, I also increased the default domain limit for subdomains and real domains and opened up the registration again. I decided to redesign the website again, but this time using an already existing component library called SADCN. Along with the redesign, I also switched over to a better authentication method using access and refresh tokens, which basically lets the user stay logged in for an indefinite amount of time, as long as they visit the website every 14 days. Shortly after redesigning the website, I managed to break the DNS by enabling DNSSEC without actually configuring it first, which basically made every DNS record unreachable. After the incident, I decided to focus on bug fixes to make sure the frontend is stable before I deploy it to the public, and that was definitely worth it, because the rewrite was the most stable version of frii.site ever released. And since SADCN supports dark and light mode, we were able to ship them as well. A few days later, I also set up a Ko-fi store for people to buy new TLDs from. Some of these TLDs were, for example, .pillow and .arrow. So do you remember when we switched over to the new DNS, which was now running on PowerDNS instead of Cloudflare? So it turns out that there is a pretty big difference between how records are created using Cloudflare and PowerDNS. Cloudflare has a different API route for creating a new DNS record and modifying an existing one. But with PowerDNS, there's only a single API endpoint to create and modify DNS records. So on Cloudflare, if you try to create a DNS record that already existed, it would throw an error and not do the operation. But on PowerDNS, it would just overwrite any existing records. I actually noticed at the time, but thought it wasn't a big deal, as the backend itself handled checking if DNS records already existed. But the problem is that official frii.site domains, so such as api.frii.site, weren't registered to an account, so when the server tried to find whoever owns it, it couldn't find anything and assumed it was free. This also explains why no user domains were affected. So on a fateful October evening, a user was able to register api.frii.site and take over the website. After doing some investigation, we figured out that nobody was actually affected by this. And the reason why was that api.frii.site was using HSTS, so if your browser had cached the HSTS header, it wouldn't let you connect without HTTPS, and since the attacker didn't have HTTPS configured, it wouldn't let you connect. But this only applied to existing users, so we also checked the front-end logs and noticed that luckily nobody had tried registering in the time that this thing took place. We also decided to make a disclosure report the day after this happened. Coincidentally, around this time we had also started experiencing exponential growth, and this was fueled mostly by Chinese individuals. To put into perspective how big this growth was, we had around 1,400 domains registered, and then 3 weeks later we had around 6,000, then 7,000, then 8,000, and then on New Year's Eve we settled at around 9,000 domains registered. The reason for the growth seems to be that a lot of Chinese YouTubers started making videos about frii.site, which I'm really grateful for, and I never thought that anyone would actually use this or make a video about it, which I found kind of insane. Right as my Christmas break had finished, I got a lovely email from Massive Grid saying that they had increased the server prices. So I logged in to check what the new prices are, and they were like 9 euros per month compared to the previous 2 euros or whatever I was paying. I didn't want to continue on Massive Grid since their servers were pretty unreliable. We actually had an outage back in July due to the fact that we were using them, so we decided to migrate to Hetzner. We also got a spec bump at the same time, so the DNS operations were much faster. I was paying around 3 euros and 75 cents per month, which was more than what I was paying for the old Massive Grid server before the price increases. And you'll never guess what Hetzner did in April. So in the span of a few months, our operational expenses had doubled. And on top of the server expenses, I was also paying for the domain, which was around 30 euros per year. So I started wondering whether I should choose to stop maintaining frii.site and to stop paying for the server, since I wasn't making any money off of it. Which I decided against, since I actually quite liked the process of creating new features and hosting it and keeping in touch with the community and such. So since I didn't want to shut frii.site down, I figured out that my only option would be to try to monetize it harder. So I started creating some ads for the store page. You can see some of them on the screen right now. And the reason why I didn't run actual ads on frii.site is because I'm not old enough for Google AdSense and I couldn't find a sketchy provider willing to give me money. I knew that my store wasn't going to achieve a lot of revenue, but I was hoping that I'd get a summer job and that'd be enough to cover the expenses. And after applying to like 15 of them, all of them rejected me. So I did some calculations and figured out that I would be spending more than 100 euros per year on frii.site, which really made me rethink my choices of keeping the project alive. Because on the other hand I quite enjoy maintaining and creating new features for it, but on the other hand I have to pay for everything myself, and there are already countless other free subdomain services out there. And at the same time I started wondering whether I should try to get rid of as many subscription-based services as I could. So after contemplating it for a few weeks, I decided to shut frii.site down on the June 24th of 2026. And what I was the most surprised about was the fact that a lot of frii.site users joined the Discord server in order to express their support towards frii.site, which I truly appreciate. I want to thank all the people that made frii.site possible, and those are What Did You Expect, Rockpie, Lugo7, PowerPC Fan, Nicolan123, Glinasama, Kubik, Tiberium, I'm Shy Mike, Rage65, Windows 8.1 VM user, PlaneTag, Luka Rantalainen, and Daniel Professional. I also want to thank Namecheap support. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you want to follow my other projects, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And that's it. Bye.